Good evening.
Northern Ireland today has the promise of a springtime of peace.
After 2 years of talks and after a generation of bloodshed and decades of division and acrimony, George Mitchell ushers in what the whole island hopes will be a new era of peace.
For the island.
Yes, 71.12%.
Tonight, we are leaving the European Union.
In 2020, after lots of back and forth between the UK and the EU, the United Kingdom withdrew from the European Union. This creates a problem with the lesser-known border between Ireland and the UK. In 1998, Ireland and Northern Ireland signed a historic ceasefire to end the 30 years of violence. Today, we will be learning about the history that led to that significant moment. In 1801, British Parliament passed the Act of the Union, making England, Scotland, and Ireland all part of the United Kingdom. From 1845 to 1849, the Irish famine killed 1 million people. This is when citizens wanted an Irish Parliament due to the English being blamed for the famine. From 1870 to the start of World War I, there was a campaign for Irish Home Rule, where Ireland could govern itself, but was never implemented due to World War I. In 1916, an event occurred known as the Easter Rising, an armed insurrection of Dublin. The rebels seized prominent buildings in Dublin and clashed with British troops. Nearly 500 people died, and the rebels, who were executed by the British, then became martyrs. In the 1918 general election, the Sinn Féin, who are a nationalist party, won a majority of votes, with Sinn Féin's elected members refused to attend the British Parliament in London and instead formed a parliament in Dublin. From 1919 to 1921, there was a war between the IRA and the British for independence of Ireland. A small number of IRA members shot 2 Royal Irish Constabulary members. This incident began the Irish War of Independence. On the 21st of November, 1920, an event occurred known as Bloody Sunday in Dublin. 14 British intelligence operatives were assassinated, and then the British fired on the crowd at a Gaelic football match, killing 14 civilians and wounding 65. Violence continued to escalate over the next several months. 1,000 people were killed, and 4,500 Irish Republicans were put in internment camps. Much of the fighting took place in Cork, Dublin, and Belfast. In July of 1921, talks between Sinn Féin and the British led to the signing of the Anglo-Irish Treaty. This ended British rule in most Ireland, and after that, the Irish Free State was created as a self-governing dominion of the UK. From 1922 to 1923, the party of Sinn Féin was split, and a civil war broke out. The pro-treaty government was fine with the fact that they were still a dominion of Britain. Anti-treaty IRA were angry about this. They felt like they were cheated on, as they wanted a united Ireland. So the leader created a new party, Fianna Fáil, who became the dominant party of Ireland. In 1937, a referendum for a new constitution to remove all British tax from Ireland was passed. Ireland leaves the English Commonwealth, which makes them formally independent. Most citizens vote in favor of the constitution. In 1949, Ireland leaves the British Commonwealth, and they change their name to Republic of Ireland, which means they have elected leaders. In the 1960s, the Troubles erupted. My dad actually grew up during the Troubles, so I decided to interview him. Here's the interview.
I grew up in Dublin. In 1969, I was born. The Troubles started in 1968. As a young boy, I remember being rushed out of a store in Dublin because there was a bomb threat. 6 months prior to that, there was a very large bomb in Dublin. In fact, there were 3 bombs detonated simultaneously in Dublin, and up to 35 people were killed. That was 1974. So as a young boy, I remember violence. I remember the TV being stopped, a news announcement that a bomb had gone off somewhere. A lot of political IRA prisoners starved themselves to death in Northern Ireland, and it just changed public opinion. There was a lot more sympathy for the nationalists in Northern Ireland after that. Another cooperation, I was in the Boy Scouts as a young man, and we hosted some Boy Scouts from Belfast. And the child that we had hosted was wild. He showed some crazy things, what he did in Belfast and what had happened. So yeah, he had been directly affected by the bombings in Northern Ireland. Belfast is 90 miles from Dublin town, so it is very real. you know there's a war going on, you know that people are suffering and they're only 90 miles away from you. So it does have an effect. It's constantly in the news. Everybody has opinions, so it is something that's there. It's in the background. So in the peace accord, I wasn't living in Ireland at the time, but 1996, the Good Friday Agreement, that was joyous for everybody. There was real hope, and you could see then how much people had suffered, how much they celebrated just in that fact that there was hope that the troubles were over.
There was a ton of violence for over 30 years. There were at least 10,000 bomb attacks during the conflict and 3,000 deaths. I won't go over everything since there's a lot, but here's a few important dates. In 1969, the Battle of the Bogside, where a Protestant parade went through Catholic, resulting in both sides throwing things at each other and escalated into a riot. In 1970, the Battle of St. Matthews occurs, where the IRA beat the armed loyalist. This is seen as a major propaganda victory for the nationalists of the Republic. There was also lots of internment camps where the citizens of Ireland would be placed. In 1972, an anti-internment march in Derry, where protesters threw rocks at the armed police, who then opened fire, killing 12 people. In 1992, the Colicides riots were clashes between Irish nationalists and British paratroopers. Finally, in 1998, the Good Friday Agreement signified the end of the Troubles. It stated that if a majority of Northern Ireland citizens want to vote to become a part of Ireland, they can. It also made Ireland its own country, separate from Northern Ireland, but they still have fluid borders. I know that was a lot of dates, but it's really important for you to understand why there's a border in Ireland. Next up, we have part 2, where my friends Omar and Jack go over the modern day, what's happening right now, and how does it affect the citizens of Ireland.